Okay, we're finally here, the end of the Starbreaker Supremacy, a 6-part crossover between Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. If you haven't already seen my videos covering the first 5 parts, I'll link to them in the description down below so you can catch up before diving into the finale. Now let's get into it. Green Lantern Corps number 9 is written by Morgan Hampton and Jeremy Adams, with pencils by Fernando Pesarin, inks by Auclair Albert, Adriano Di Benedito, and Daniel Henriquez, and colors by Arif Prianto. The title of this issue is The Starbreaker Supremacy Part 6. This issue picks up where Green Lantern number 27 left off. The planet Oa is glowing with a rainbow of emotional spectrum energy as the Interceptor makes his final approach. Everyone on board is shocked to find all of the central batteries up and running, and an army of different Lantern Corps and released inmates waiting for them on the ground. Superboy breaks the news about John's sacrifice, but there's no time to process that because the Sun Eaters have arrived. Hal orders the green, blue, and indigo lanterns to focus on defense while everybody else attacks. From here, most of the issue is the kind of gigantic fight you'd expect from a big finale like this. And to their credit, it's pretty entertaining. It's full of cool moments like the red and yellow lanterns combining their powers into one gigantic blast. And the art looks good, though there are some coloring mistakes. A Green Lantern firing yellow energy, a Red Lantern spitting out teal napalm. Not long ago, we could explain these away as people manifesting different spectrum powers. But the emotional spectrum should be fixed now that the central batteries are all online. They probably just needed to spend more time on the colors, which likely wasn't the colorist's fault, since you don't have any control over the unreasonable deadlines you're given. A Red Lantern who sure does look like Isma Cole gets brutally killed and Razor claims his red ring. I don't know how I feel about this. I get that they want to return the character to his classic costume and powers, and I never really thought he should stay a Green Lantern long term, but embracing rage all over again feels like a regression for Razor's character. Maybe this is all leading up to him dual-wielding red and blue like he did in that episode of Young Justice, and then maybe he'll transition fully to being a Blue Lantern. I kind of both love and hate the fact that he puts his green ring on Aya's finger as they look lovingly into each other's eyes. It's sweet, but it's also a reminder that their reunion has been fully glossed over. In the middle of all the chaos, Ellie Rose Stewart expresses her sincere hope that she can make her brother John proud, and her Blue Lantern ring erupts with dazzling light and beautiful constructs. St. Walker notices, and they have a nice moment where he encourages her and tells her this is only the beginning of her journey. Something that occurred to me after I finished my last review video is that Ellie Rose could be the key to the Blue Lanterns finally getting their own comic series. Because despite being so popular, the way the Blue Lantern power works has always made it difficult to tell solo stories about members of this Corps. Blue Lanterns were designed as a support class. They need Green Lanterns around to unlock the higher functions of their blue rings. But Ellie is a living Green Lantern construct. She is made of the willpower energy used by the Green Rings. Is it possible that being near Ellie would be enough to unlock the blue rings? We can't tell from this issue because there are tons of blue and green lanterns in the same place, but this moment could very easily be setting up more stories centering around St. Walker and Ellie. After fighting for a while, the tide turns when Starbreaker, just suddenly decides to win? He says that the lanterns are helpless because their powers are made of the same emotional energy that feeds the Sun Eaters. And then all of the Sun Eaters just start absorbing all of the ring energy and constructs being thrown around. And yeah, it makes sense, but why are they only doing this now? This fight started 6 pages ago. If the Sun Eaters could neutralize the Lantern's powers so easily, why weren't they feeding like this right from the start? Hell, why didn't they just do this when the Lanterns showed up with the entities a few issues ago? But no time for logic, I guess, because we've got to cut over to Simon waking up on the floor after Krona's consciousness used him to start the process of creating a new body for Krona to inhabit. Simon has no idea what's going on, but he sees a machine that looks big and evil, so he smashes it with a hammer. Krona's consciousness wasn't finished downloading into its new body, and apparently the remaining 10% shot out like lightning and struck the Guardians, who suddenly got their memories back? Yeah, apparently they haven't done anything to help with any of this because they came back to life wrong or something back during the Civil Core storyline. It's all very vague and only kinda makes sense if you don't really think about it. Hey look, Krona's new body is a messed up clone of Hal Jordan for some reason. Weird. I bet we get a storyline where Hal and Carol are finally gonna get married, but uh-oh, it's actually Krona. Anyway, now that the Guardians have finally decided to start participating in the story, they fly over to the central batteries and, I guess, turn them all the way up or something? All of the batteries combined start emitting so much energy that the Sun Eaters can't resist it. I don't know how this could impress them so much after they spent a few days feeding on the entire emotional spectrum, but whatever. Starbreaker and the rest of the Sun Eaters fly into the various central batteries, and that's it. The Guardians turn the batteries back down to normal levels, and the Sun Eaters are apparently going to be content to just stay in there forever, eternally surrounded by more food than they could ever possibly eat. Guy Gardner doesn't think this sounds like a solution, and I agree. They're just sort of trusting that the Sun Eaters won't want to come back out. What happens the next time one of these central batteries gets drained or blows up? Because it absolutely will happen. But no time for that because there's only 2 pages left. When John made his sacrifice last issue, his mother, Shirley Stewart, could feel something was wrong. The connection they shared was suddenly severed, so she went out looking for him. But what she found isn't what anyone likely expected. The ring containing Shirley's consciousness arrives on a planet in the dark sectors, where John Stewart and Katma Tui are working on their small family farm. John is visibly angry and annoyed to see a Green Lantern ring come to bring him back to Oa, and there's a very good reason for that. This is not the same John Stewart who sacrificed himself to reignite the central batteries. In order to explain this, we need to briefly talk about how the previous run of Green Lantern ended. This location, the Dark Sectors, are a section of space quarantined by a renegade new god named Isak. He was using that region of space to conduct some wildly unethical experiments involving hypertime. You know that famous explanation for alternate timelines, where a single choice can create 2 branching paths that become 2 entirely separate timelines? Imagine that, only the branching paths are temporary, and they merge back into one single timeline after a little while. But for the short time that those branching paths exist, there are 2 different versions of the timeline, and both are the real one. John Stewart defeated Isak by teaming up with another version of himself plucked out of hypertime. And when the threat was over, what we would call our John Stewart decided to stay in the Dark Sectors because he knew that hypertime would allow him to find a version of his wife Katma Tui who was still alive. The other John who came out of hypertime is the character we've been reading about ever since. That's the John who is in Dark Crisis and War Journal and sacrificed himself to repower the central batteries. This John Stewart that we see on the farm with Katma is the John Stewart that we've been reading stories about for decades, and he last appeared at the very end of the Geoffrey Thorne run, specifically in the one-shot John Stewart and the Emerald Knight #1. Interestingly, this John Stewart wouldn't know anything about what's been going on with his family lately. He wouldn't know that his mom died, or that his sister was back as a sentient construct, since all of that was experienced by the other John. But again, I cannot stress this enough. They are both the real John Stewart. And this one looks like he finally found happiness far away from war and rings. What I find funny is that last issue I was upset that they seemed to be rolling back John's ascension with some flimsy explanation about him letting go of his powers forever that didn't make any sense at all. But not only would that not take any power away from this John, it might actually make him more powerful. In the John Stewart Emerald Knight one-shot, it was established that as long as 2 Johns were coexisting in the same reality, the ascended power of one John Stewart would be split evenly between them. If the other John really did die reigniting the central batteries, which I guess actually is a possibility now, that would mean the one remaining John just got his full ascended power back. Now at this point I'm fully expecting some dumb twist, like one John rejecting his ascended power rejects it for both of them or something like that, since I have to imagine there's an editorial desire to reset John back to his most iconic, basic, and marketable form, just like they did with Razor. But yeah, the Starbreaker Supremacy is over, and I'm glad to see it go. It feels like every good thing I could possibly say about this story comes with a downside. I love the idea of using older stories as the basis for new ones, but I hate the fact that they're only taking select elements from those older stories and leaving out anything that would be inconvenient to deal with. I love the fact that they brought back the entities, but I hate the fact that the entities were killed off almost immediately. I love the potential of Ellie Rose with the Blue Lantern ring, but why should I get my hopes up after seeing the totally disinterested way all of Starbreaker's new lanterns were handled? And I never fully understood who the villains were, what they were doing, or how they were doing it, and nothing about that changed by the end. The more I read of the Jeremy Adams run, the more sure I am that the Green Lantern comic I want to read isn't the same kind of Green Lantern comic he wants to write. Lately, it feels like these stories are being written for people with no attention span, where 100 new exciting ideas will be introduced, but only 10 of them will ever get explored, and even those will be drowned out by too much other stuff going on at the same time. Some people probably find that exciting. I find it exhausting, and I'm tired of getting my hopes up for nothing. So that's Green Lantern Corps number 9, the end of the Starbreaker Supremacy crossover. Now I want to hear what you have to say. How do you think they'll handle John Stewart going forward? Do you like the idea of Razor becoming a Red Lantern again? Would you read a Blue Lantern book starring Saint Walker and Ellie Rose Stewart? Tell me all about it in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there's no telling where these characters will go next, and I look forward to discovering it along with you. Follow Mosaic Comics on Blue Sky for more of my random thoughts on comics in general, and until next time, let me just say thank you for taking the time to watch. My name is Dan, we'll talk again soon.